This is a Silver Bullet DIY kit how-to build video. You may have seen a couple of my other videos in the past, and I'll likely take those down as this will be a combination video clarifying everything and combining it all into one video. But basically, what you're going to get if you order the DIY kit is the handle color that you chose. This will be wrapped in tape over the top to keep anything from falling out basically during shipping, inside which is the screws. So if you just take these apart, you're going to dump all the screws out, which is fine as long as you cut the tape and you know that they're going to be in there. There you have it. So you're going to get 4 brass inserts and 4, probably a bit hard to see, but 4 of these 8mm long M3 knurled alloy screws. So what our task is to basically sink those brass bits into the handles, which isn't all that much of a process. You will need something hot, which I've got my soldering iron here, and we're going to use that in a minute. I also wanted to point out that it's pretty obvious on the front handle here, the 2 holes that you got on either side are for those, and this top bit is for your pick tip. But on the bottom handle here, or however you want to call this, the tensioning handle or the rear handle I call it, there's 2 sets of holes, and what these are for is, this is modeled after the metal version, and it's for these sets. This one towards the knurled side, and this one is the ones that you're going to want to use now. But these other sets are made for, in the future, upgrade for other types of pick tips, such as Ablet Classic, or in the future anything that needs to be a 4mm tensioner. We have here the rear tension, and this will, if we see there, will poke all the way through, and we have our small hole at the back, we have our large hole up front. So it's somewhat apparent if you look at it and you realize that that's what the other one set of holes is for. But I wanted to point that out on camera because I didn't make that very clear in the past. So the ideal thing to do is typically going to be taking also your tensioner or your pick tip, whichever one you're doing, and putting it into the handle, and then sinking your brass into that so you don't go too far. And then we'll do a little bit of plastic cleanup at the end. So I will show the full process here. I think that that's in field of view. Just be a little bit careful with the soldering iron. These brass bits heat up pretty fast, so I like to just slip it on the end of my soldering iron, or kind of place it, if you're somewhat comfortable with placing it like that. It's a little bit hard to see if I'm attempting to do this so that you can see it, but basically we're just going to want to slip it on the end and use that to kind of go, and you have a couple seconds before it starts heating up and sinking in place, as you can see. And we can just go all the way until we feel a little bit of resistance, and then pull out. That's it. So hopefully you can see that that's just a bit below the surface, and even if it's right flush at the surface, you'll still be able to get there with these screws, but it's better just to go a little bit below, I feel. Again, set it on top carefully, or slip it under the end of your soldering iron, whichever you're comfortable with. Soldering iron doesn't have to have a pointy tip like mine has. I think that the standard wedge tips or blunt tips should work fine, but this is all I have on my soldering iron. So that's what I'm going to use. So there we have that one. And I'll go ahead and we'll stick this one in the handle and sink these ones in as well. It'll make the video a little bit longer, but I feel like it's not that big of a deal. Just go ahead and do a full installation. And there we are. So on this handle, it is a little bit more important that you go at least flush, but a little bit lower is ideal, or just so that, when the two handles nest together, which obviously I have to take out the tensioner right now, that you're not going to get any binding or anything like that. If you do get little burrs of plastic there, you'll have to either you can melt them to smooth them out, or just trim them off with something sharp. Unplug my soldering iron so don't forget about that. And the last bit is now to either take your tensioner or some other pointy implement and basically clear there's likely a little bit of plastic in there. Hopefully you can see that. Just behind the threads, and if I were to make that hole a little bit larger to have very little plastic, it doesn't hold as well, and it's possible to get slippage. So you can take this and you can tap something on the top of it, just like a little hammer, and that usually gets it out, and then basically just dig that little guy out. Sometimes this goes better if you do it right away, but I've found both ways works, and you can typically get it out and pull it out with pliers and do all that. It's a little bit fiddly and it takes a little bit of time, and that's the reason why I primarily wanted to offer the DIY kits, is because spending the time on a lot of these DD picks to do that does take a bit more than would be ideal, but I'll leave you guys to that. Other than that, don't burn yourself with your soldering iron. Remember that the brass heats up pretty quick. When you do go put it together, I'll just show. You just basically press, kind of twist, and that'll get you all the way to the back of your handles. Your handle should go up to about that second hole, just like that. That means your tension wire is all the way to the back. And you're going to insert your grub screws, making sure the little pointy thing is down, or you can put them on the end of your Allen wrench or whatever you want to call it, and screw them in place. Now, when you tighten them down, it's likely to be pretty self-centering, but I usually just look at the top here and make sure that the pick is relatively centered. And once you get the tensioner in there and everything snug, you can give it a crank on either side, and make sure that you don't have any binding when you twist your handles or anything, that it's not really kind of like out of whack. That's all there is really to it. You don't have to put very much tension or torque onto these front ones. The back ones you might have to, depending on how much tension you put on the tip as you're picking. you know, how much tension you put on the lock. And if you find that it slips a little bit, just keep your wrench for the first few times that you're going to pick and give this guy, you know, a quarter of a turn or an eighth of a turn. Doesn't really take all that much more to lock them up. Other than that, good luck and happy picking, and I hope you guys enjoy your silver bullets.